Good afternoon. I'm Rabbi Dan Freelander, a member of the board of the Zamir Choral Foundation, and it's my honor to host this afternoon's session. Zoom has been upgrading to a new platform, Zoom 5.0, and you know, we are just the Zamir Choral Foundation. We don't own Zoom or Twitter, so we're trying to figure out the glitches that we're all facing today. But I want to welcome you to this series of calls of music in challenging times. The music you were listening to was by Cantor, Benjie, and Schiller, called Hallelujah, Psalm 150, performed by Beged Kefet, by a performing group that both Benjie and her husband, Rabbi Les Bronstein, have been a member of for many, many years. We are very pleased that you're with us today, and I'd like to introduce the process for today. I'll introduce all the presenters. There'll be a dialogue between Mati, Lazar, and Cantor, between Les and Benjie. And then we will take some questions from your group. If you have questions, please put them in the chat box. I'll be screening them, and I will ask them to Mati and Les and Benjie later in the session today. And we will be ending today at about 10 minutes after 5. We're going a little late than usual because of the glitches with Zoom. So here are the three people we're going to be hearing from today. First, Les Bronstein. Rabbi Les Bronstein has served as the rabbi of Beit Shalom, a Reconstructionist congregation in White Plains, New York since 1989. He is the immediate past president of the New York Board of Rabbis, who was ordained in 1987 by the Hebrew Union College Jewish Institute of Religion in New York. And he and his wife serve as the Rabbi Cantor team at Beit Shalom. He's a past president of the Westchester Board of Rabbis, past national chair of the Jewish Federations of North America Rabbinic Cabinet, and a past board member of the Reconstructionist Rabbinic Association. And he currently serves on the board of Truah, a rabbinic call for human rights. Cantor Benjie Ellen Schiller is professor of cantorial arts at the Debbie Friedman School of Sacred Music at the Hebrew Union College in New York. Her work there involves training cantorial and rabbinical students to bridge the gap between performance and spiritual leadership. She also serves as the cantor of Beit Shalom Synagogue in White Plains with her husband, Rabbi Les Bronstein. Benjie is a nationally known composer and has created dozens of works for choirs, synagogues, and interfaith groups. Her infectious smile and beautiful voice and compositions are especially loved by our family of singers at the Zamir Choral Foundation, the Hazamir International Teen Choir, and the attendees of the annual North American Jewish Choral Festival. And of course, our moderator today, Mati Lazar, is the founder and director of the Zamir Choral Foundation. He's created a renaissance in Jewish choral music in North America and serves as the conductor of the Zamir Choral and created the North American Jewish Choral Festival, Hazamir, the Teen Choir, and Zamir Noded. He has conducted choral and choral orchestral Jewish-themed concerts across North America and Israel, and has conducted all the great cantors of this generation. So now it's my pleasure to turn this over to Mati Lazar.
Thank you very much, Danny, and thank you, Benjie and Les, and thank you to all of you out there who had the patience to wait for us. Benjie, Les, I once heard Rabbi Gerson Cohen, the late chancellor of the Jewish Theological Seminary, say that the rabbi tells the people what God wants, but the cantor tells God what the people want. As a rabbi and a cantor married to each other, serving the same congregation, I want to ask you, how do you balance those conflicting and competing needs, and what role does music serve?
Yeah.
You want to start?
We have to balance those conflicting positions because we also are married to each other and we have to go home together. And so for the sake of Shalom bias, for domestic tranquility, whatever issues we have between us, disagreements about rabbinic authority, cantorial authority, who's hegemony, who's right, we just decide, it's not as important as getting along when we go back home. So in a certain weird way, the fact that we're married makes it easier for us to work as a rabbi and cantor because certain machlokes become obviated, I think, we have to get along.
We started our lives together way before there was even this beginning of this relationship, singing together in Zamir Choral, and leading prayer in different capacities. So this is kind of the core of our relationship. But Mati, to get to your answer a little bit, for us, I think what's hard is to even separate music from prayer, and the service as a whole from the music. They're so thoroughly wed together, no pun intended there, so that the decision-making process involves a lot of listening, and we come from different perspectives as far as some issues about timing, very few different perspectives about style. We love a lot of the same music, and we learn from each other, and we try to infuse the conversation with lots of respect. And when we don't agree, what's most important at the end?
I defer to her.
What's most important in the end is trust. Trust in opening one's mind and heart to different perspectives and learning from the process.
In choosing the music that you are both choosing for the service, and I'll want to talk to you a little later about the difference between music in the life of the clergy and music. You're both very experienced musicians, so I want to hear about that difference. But when you choose music, what is the balance that you're trying to accomplish between non-COVID-19 times, between the cantor singing or the rabbi singing or singing together in harmony to evoke some kind of spiritual moment, and having the congregation engaged in singing with you? And what kinds of parameters do you have about the range of music?
Wow. Yeah.
What's at the very top of our list is, I would sum it up as invitation. Not that all of the music is for participation, but that the music can be accessible. So a lot of our music, Mati, a lot of the music in the service is based on nusach. That is a given for us. The nusach for us connects us in time to a sacred tradition. And also the patterns in nusach are about return. And return, that concept of return, repetition, chant, is a way to recite the liturgy. That's a foundation of a lot of our music. And at the same time, invitation is about the active role that we want the congregation to play in singing with us, in really engaging fully, not passively. So a lot of the melodies that we choose, we look for both simplicity and integrity. We look for tradition, we look for cutting edge.
But I got to say, you show great respect to the congregation. You don't make it easy. You give them hard things to sing. You
Yeah.
give them wide range. You don't dumb down any of the music. You're not from that world that says that if we go through traditional nusach, it's going to be too hard or too obscure, too abstruse, too anachronistic for people. That you don't do that. You allow people to go ahead and experience very traditional, very recognizable nusach, and you let them in. You make it accessible. But you don't make it easy, but you make it singable. You make it possible. It's a great compliment I can give you. I'm hoping everyone's listening to that. It's that Benjie set a different tone, I think, for cantors than that people were accustomed to being afraid that if they made it too hard, if they made it too, authentic, that nobody would come, that people wouldn't sing, that we go on, they wouldn't be able to. I find that people are dying to get into that synagogue and sing along with her, and they don't mind a wide melodic range. They don't mind being introduced to what we call authentic music, historically authentic music, interesting music, classics. She does it and they sing along. She doesn't sing at them, and she generally doesn't sing a lot of solos. As a matter of fact, when some of our congregants are able to go to Zamir concerts, like the Great Hanukkah concert or the Yom Ha'atzmaut, and they hear Benjie actually sing and just really let it roll, a lot of them come on and they say, well, we had no idea that Benjie sang like that. Because in fact, Benjie pulls herself back and lets the music take over and then lets the congregation take over. I mean, that's a marvelous technique that she has there. I think I think the main reason is that people are dying to sing. Forget COVID time, in any time, people love that visceral feeling of the air coming through your body, of the sound coming out of yourself. And a lot of people don't think of themselves as being able to sing or sing very well, but if they sing with a chazan like you, and with me, supporting and coming along and singing along with you, I think they feel that they sound great. And if they sound great, they feel great. And some of that becomes prayer for them. And when it isn't prayer, at least it's a sense of feeling very human, ultimately human. And then some of it becomes prayer, and it kind of works. But again, it comes from, I know, a lot of it comes because I respect Benjie's choices with the music. Benjie's an expert in the repertoire, in the long library of great Jewish music. And she says, I think we should sing the Feigenholz Adon Olam. I'm making this up. And I go, I don't know the Feigenholz Adon Olam, but let's give it a try. I have to trust her. And then I'll often tell her, the Feigenholz Adon Olam didn't seem to work, But if it did work, then we do it again forever. I hope this sort of addresses the point that you're making. It celebrates the people that are singing. That's the main thing. What? Now you're muted, Mati. Mati, you're muted. Now you're not muted.
How about now?
Yes.
Thanks. Yeah, it was such an interesting answer to what my question was or wasn't, that I'm very happy to hear it. But I want to pick up on two things that you said.
I'm a rabbi.
One
Never
is
the question was asked. Right.
And you're right too. The first question is, Benjie, really, since you're a composer and very often you must be writing for the congregation, and you said that nusach is so important to the congregation, and you're lucky in that way, I know. Do you compose music that is intentionally incorporating nusach so that the congregation can be learning the nusach? Since we know this wonderful expression that people who knew nusach could walk by a shul and know exactly what day or what holiday it is, just from the different styles of the different kinds of music. And the other aspect that last I wanted to ask you is, how do you differentiate between the participatory nature of people who love to sing and need to sing, and the phrase active listening, kind of what we do when we go hear the symphony play? It's not that we're not engaged, we're engaged, just not in an active way. I don't remember hearing anyone behind me singing the tunes to the New World Symphony by Dvorak. Well, I actually once did, but people can have such a thing as active listening. So, Benjie, maybe you can start us off about the nusach and how that's a creative component of your composing, and then let's maybe jump in with the difference between active listening and participatory singing.
How about this? Adon olam asher mala, terem kol yitzir nivra. How about that?
It's a great tune. Wonderful questions,
Okay.
Mati.
Go ahead.
I think a cantor composes all the time when he or she improvises in the moment. There's a foundation of the nusach, the motivic phrases, the harmonic language, the entire gestalt of the nusach. And I try to do that on a regular basis. The pieces I write for choir are often not directly connected to the nusach because they're not used liturgically, although the liturgic pieces I've written of the past few years, the meditations I've written, or pieces for a life cycle event are still connected. Now I'm using nusach in a larger sense, still very much connected to the formulaic patterns of the nusach. I have such a high regard for the nusach, and we cantors improvise and spontaneously in the moment create music in that moment that's based very much wedded very closely to the nusach. To deal with your other question, if I may, I'm now transported to the High Holy Days, and Les and I are chanting Zacharti Lach Haben Yakirli, which is a very precious moment in the High Holy Day liturgy. And when we sing, and that we rehearse.
Actually, everybody gets quiet and wants to hear it.
People don't sing with us.
I didn't realize that until several years after we were doing it, that people actually shut up and listened.
It's a rare moment at Beit Shalom, and it's a revered moment. We are really sitting in that moment in great awe of the Zikronot there, of the memory. And so that's a moment. Another moment that it brings to me, also the High Holy Days, is the third recitation of Kol Nidre, when I try to give the gesture of invitation. And by that third time, everyone is singing, but we've earned it. They've listened actively, meditated, deferred, and by that third time, everybody comes in, and there, the grandeur and the majesty of that prayer is fully realized. And the what felt not like passive participation, but people were sitting humbly before the prayer. By the third time, the congregation lifts it up to a new level.
I mean, on your point about active listening versus participation, I think it's a sort of a cliche that all the rabbis want, singing along, participation, and all the cantors want, active listening. Please listen to me now. I'd like to make a shout out for professional cantors who, because of their professional expertise, can allow people to have some active listening, which is also very, very prayerful. But I think in a synagogue setting, participating versus active listening is like the breathing in and the breathing out. You need both. I mean, you can't just breathe out. You can't just breathe in. I think congregants love this back and forth. Breathe out, they're singing. And then breathe in, take in what the cantor's singing, then breathe out, and then breathe in. And if we can allow them to have that nice rhythm, they don't have to be aware of it, but they're feeling that they like to be quiet, listen. Cantor goes into a beautiful recitative in the Kedusha, comes up, and they're waiting and waiting and waiting. Now it's our turn. Rabbi leads everybody into Kadosh, and then they pull back and listen a little more. I think people really love that. You can't listen actively to a singer who can't sing. Sorry, that's obvious, right? But not so obvious. As I say, I'm giving a shout out here to professional chazans the people who have that training and the expertise, but also the expertise at being able to say, I'm singing now, I'm making time for you, get ready, and now, breathe in. You sing now, you breathe out. And if you can get to that, again, these are rhythms that are something like spirituality. They're not spirituality, but there's something like it. They're a setting for, they're a frame around the picture. But the picture is the life experience of people, and if they can see themselves in that, or feel themselves in that rhythm of breathing out and in, being included, and then listening, I think it can make a nice thing. I have an anecdote, but I don't know if you got time for it. Go ahead. You want to start over? I can't hear you.
I want to hear that anecdote in a second, but I want to pursue your breathing in and breathing out point, because I think it's one of the most significant aspects of our religion. If you look at God's name, at least in Hebrew, 50% of God's name is the breath character. So, that's one of the proofs of God, of Judaism being an Eastern religion. But I want to talk about the breathing in and breathing out, the singing in and the singing out, and bring in that third viewpoint, which is silence, and how silence can lead you, as you said before, that it's almost like spirituality. It is spirituality, or it's at least on the continuum to spirituality. And I want to hear what you really think about and how you use silence.
Okay. You want to talk about silence?
I'll start with something, Mati, you and I have talked about, which is that moment of culmination at the end of the Amida, when all the prayers have been said. The prayers are never fully said, but the prayers have been recited. Yeah. And it's time to have that personal moment of asking for our prayers to be accepted. May the words of my mouth and meditations of my heart be acceptable. Oseh Shalom. There's release, there's conclusion. And then in a very kind of an inner way, very personal, reflective way, there is silence in the room. And it's the denouement in a certain way of the whole experience. And out of that silence, only at the right moment, comes the music. And the music becomes the bridge from the silence of the prayer, of my own heart and soul, back in gradually, delicately into the community. I'm thinking of Ernest Bloch's gorgeous Yehu L'Ratzon that many people on this conversation perhaps have sung and know, and so many of those settings. The silence is also very, very much a part of the process. The one thing I wanted to add, which you didn't add, is about movement versus stillness. That's another part of it. A lot of prayer is about movement, whether we're up on our toes, whether we're bowing, also whether we're sitting still. And part of the silence is a moment of stillness, to focus and allow everything to coalesce within in a very personal way. So the silence, the music can't happen without the silence.
Stravinsky wrote a silence, a big long silence in the Hallelujah, in his setting in Latin of Psalm 150. And it's remarkable there. And he writes about it in his own notes. He writes about that pregnant silence. I don't know what he didn't call it pregnant, but something like that, a very huge silence. So very important to allow people to hear themselves breathing, to actually hear themselves walking around, because invariably when we get to the silence, there's always somebody walking around, and then they stop and they realize, oh God, they hear me now. Oh, I better stand here. Shh, I better, shah. Right? I'm not contributing to the spirituality of the moment here. So there is, I mean, look, I wanted to give yeah, go ahead.
I wanted to pick up on that, Benjie, what you said about after the silence, and then there's the right moment. So I want to talk about that right moment for a second.
Megan comes back. Right?
Leonard Bernstein would say there's only one correct moment to start conducting a piece. So I'm asking the two of you, how do you judge, both in person in normal times, so to speak, and in COVID times, how do you judge when that silence has reached its apex and has fulfilled its destiny and is now ready to lead into the music.
Mati, I just want to say, as someone who's sung with you, I have had many moments where you are preparing all of us by preparing yourself. You are listening to the sound in the room before you start the piece, or you continue the piece. And I watch your face, and I know what you were doing in that moment is listening.
Listen to his own heartbeat.
Exactly.
question.
Exactly.
question.
You're intuiting something that is in the larger universe. And what a leader needs to do more than almost anything else, once all the preparation is done, is to listen, is to be present, and to feel the vibration in the room, and not to be afraid to take the time for the silence, even though our heartbeat as the leader is moving pretty fast. It's all about the sacred act of listening, and that is connecting to the congregation, connecting to oneself, and connecting something that's larger than any of us. It's many different levels of listening, and for the prayer leader, that's essential.
At Kol Nidre night and at the Nehila, we give people this free reign to do a long, long, silent Amida. And we just go off in a corner, we come back, and then I get Utsi and think, I think we need to move this along, Cantor. And the Cantor looks at me and she's saying, not yet. And I've learned to listen to everybody's heart beating. And finally I realized that that's what you're listening for. And then you're listening to, no, now. In other words, there's one moment to start conducting the piece. And I've learned from my partner. It's the same, I mean, it's a variation on learning everything about this relationship. Even the private parts of it, the domestic parts, you have to listen to the other one. And the other one teaches you now. Not yet, now. So I'm thinking about that with 1,000 people in there in our big tent, Kol Nidre night, and I want to get this thing moving, we're going to run out of time here. She says, no, they're not ready yet. Now I start the niggin. Now I'll start Yale or whatever it is that you go into then, or the rest. It's beautiful.
Good, in your direction.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Now, yeah.
Thank you. I think there's a delay.
There's one moment to start the speaking, and that's great.
Right. and a penny tax for you too.
Oh, God.
That's the silence.
Yeah. I want to ask you, Benjie, since Les threw it in your direction, how I'm asking you to kind of psychoanalyze yourself by taking a step back. How do you experience that moment of knowing or knowing/feeling that it's now? This is the moment. It's not. I know it's not purely. It's not intellectual because, as you expressed so beautifully, and thank you for that. I know about that moment, and I know how not to step in that moment. And it takes experience to have the confidence and mostly the patience to listen and to wait for that a silent bat call to appear, so this is the moment. How do you experience that moment?
I'm thinking of this past Shabbat. Over Zoom, we leaders have to plan meticulously because that listening is very, very limited. We have each other. We can, when we extend ourselves to look on the screen, we can see the engagement. We try actually to not make people feel self-conscious or ourselves feel self-conscious, so we don't look a lot. So a lot of it is trust. Yeah. This particular Shabbos, and it was second day Chag, we chose a reading about receiving Torah. We planned ahead what the niggin post Amida was going to be. We sang the Babaver wedding niggin for the connection to Shavuot. I went over to the piano. I couldn't see anybody. We started to sing it.
And we can't hear anybody.
I invited people to sing. And at some moment, Les looked at me. We made it, we made a lovely, gracious diminuendo. And Les started to lead the reading. Somewhere out of time, in the mystery of time, the little beautiful Iyun from the Siddur. And when it was over, instead of walking over and going to the Torah service, we just intuited and kept singing the niggin a little bit more. I don't know how else to answer your question, except that when one can be as fully present as one can be, there is an I-thou experience that you can have in that moment where you've planned it, so you know the container of time. You know mostly what's coming next, but if you have an ultimate trust and actually an I-thou with your co-leader, and you are so fully present in the moment, you can relinquish the rational part and a wiser knowing comes in. And that's the moment of knowing.
I hope I don't get in trouble for saying this. The leader and the congregation are in a certain way in a love relationship, and over time they learn how to make love. They learn the timing of the partner. I don't know if we could intuit the timing of our congregation on Zoom if we hadn't been doing it for over 30 years with the same congregation, so that we've learned each other's timing. To get my joke, we've learned each other's timing. And so now we are imagining it, intuiting it, we're feeling it, although we're only getting our side. If you ask about, how do we respond to silence or create silence? For us, it's all silence on this end. It's very strange. We don't even have the cues of listening for or imagining that we can hear their heartbeats. We don't hear a darn thing. It's very strange.
So we're imagining ourselves in the moment in the shul with everyone. It's all referential, if you will.
Yeah.
Were we not to have that as our backbone, we wouldn't be able to do this as easily. But we're in that liturgical moment.
But if lovers have been in this situation for years and years and have listened to each other's not now is enough, not yet. Im ta'iru, im ta'oraru et ahavad shetichpatz, from the Song of Songs. Don't rush it until it's time. And when it's time, do it. And when you think it's right about enough, I think it's time to stop doing it, that kind of thing. So it's all intuition and it's all experience, but it's also all trusting not only each other as leaders. You have to trust the congregation.
No question.
You have to trust them. You have to love them. I mean, you really do have to.
Go ahead, sorry.
That's right.
It's a fascinating thing to hear you both articulate, and less for you to articulate the idea, and Benjie, you just said it, the chut hashidra, the spinal cord, of how everything rests on this experience, and how you're able to intuit the ki'ilu moments, the as if moments, that you know exactly what would normally be happening now, and even though it's almost an act of faith. In music, the biggest act of faith is 3 against 2, because where something should happen, it's happening, but it's not really happening. And you just have to have the faith a little longer. And the practice makes perfect, which leads me to not a question, but a kind of, I guess, semi-statement praising the professionalism of the clergy and the professionalism of people who really do the kinds of jobs that they do, which is that in those moments of improvisation, those moments of chaos, those moments of uncertainty, it's people who have done it so many times who don't instinctively jump in when they shouldn't, who don't instinctively wait because they're waiting for Deus Ex Machina to appear, but people who they're over themselves. They know what to expect, and they're available for that moment of divine or semi-divine inspiration.
Mati, I want to interrupt for a second because we have some really fascinating questions from the group that I don't think Les and Benjie have been able to see. So let me just pose some of them.
We're not open in the chat, so we don't. Yeah.
And one comes from my teacher and rabbi of my own youth, rabbi I've known as long as I've known Les, Rabbi Henry Zub, who writes, "What's the role for chazanut, in particular major cantorial solos, in the future?"
That's a beautiful question, Hank. Thank you for that. And we have to program those moments with great sensitivity to the, as Les described, the breathing out and breathing in. One of the issues of the Cantor recitative is the 4 minutes, 5 minutes, some of those pieces, or a lot of word repetition, a lot of emotion and passion that has to fit in a certain way and doesn't fit in another way. One of the ways I've tried to fit in that style, that drama, that pathos, and that artistry is in segments. For instance, beginning Ahash Givenu on Erev Shabbat, chanting part of it with the grandeur, coming back, allowing for some private davening, then coming back at the end, Ufros Aleinu Sukkot Shalom Mecha. In other words, modifying it.
Or English reading interposed in it.
Right, exactly. Finding other ways liturgically and also outside of the liturgical setting to include that repertoire that is so much a part of our tradition. This is one of the reasons why the Cantors love the High Holy Days and the festivals, because there we get the opportunity to bring in some of the grander chazanut. Another thing we try to do at our synagogue is do small concerts for let's say at the Oneg Shabbat, we can have half an hour of hearing cantorial music.
Active listening.
Right, right. But it's a tricky business because those cantor recitatives need to fit in within the trajectory and the time frame of the service. That's hard.
So I want to play off that. This comes from Cantor Jeff Klepper. He says, he asks, Benjie, let's consider the tune, the actual choice of melody versus the interpretation of that melody. Which is more important? Which is more impactful? And but it goes to the Yisrael HaTfilah question. Okay?
Why don't you just bring Jeff on to answer his own question? He knows as much about this as
anybody. He's been looking for an
else.
answer for years.
He knows as much about it as anybody I've ever met. Jeff knows all this anyway. What's the answer? I don't know. I think the choice is one thing. Interpretation has a lot to do with the taste and the style of that congregation. You have to know that congregation. You know, it's
Right.
Give me a better answer.
Right.
Than that.
We right at the beginning of the pandemic, I sometimes listened to the Nava Tehillah recordings on YouTube while I'm cooking Shabbos dinner. I love hearing Jewish music, and they've been a place I've gone. And I heard their Ana Elna Rafan Allah, the very beginning, the first weeks. And at first it was very simple, almost I felt it was a little too simple. And the more I heard it, the more it kind of grew on me. And we brought that in, but we interpreted it a little differently.
More complexly.
A little bit more so.
Yeah.
And so I think I would go with what Les is saying, that the interpretation, when you're a prayer leader, the interpretation might even be more important. I hate to say
I want to expand that from the liturgical moment to all of music, because the choice of the repertoire is significant, especially if it's of a high order, but without interpretation, I don't mean cheapening or grandiosity, but without interpretation, there is no humanity. The interpretation is soul-to-soul communication.
Right.
The choice of repertoire is the vehicle through which you can have that soul-to-soul communication.
Right.
that's beautiful.
Yeah, look, if we're just making a recording, there's no audience whatsoever. So we choosing repertoire and interpreting it our way, and that's one thing. But when we're doing these live services, even though we're not getting any feedback at all, except maybe some silent video, they're looking at us, you know. We are trying to interpret for that community, for that group, right
And for
there.
that moment, right.
In which case, the humanity has to come through. It's not a recording. It's live,
Yeah.
give and take. It's love making.
You
It is
keep
love
going
making.
back to that.
I can't help it. That's the way it is.
The one thing I would say also is, as interpreters, we do want to connect to the inspiration of the composer, not just the inspiration, but the kavanah of the composer. We want to go back to that as part of our understanding of developing an interpretation. What is the composer saying? What is the arranger saying? What is their relationship to the prayer? What is their relationship to the text? How can that inform my interpretation?
But Benjie,
That's the first. That's
Monty,
the first job of the, sorry, Danny. That's the first job of the conductor, is to be the attorney representing the composer. And that's where
Very
one
nice.
has to start.
Very nice, very nice.
But that's a different question as a prayer leader, as clergy. That's one interpretation. As a musician and performer, it may be another. I often ask the question: is the role of music to create spirituality in the congregation or in the audience, or is the role of music to express the spirituality of the composer?
Mm-hmm.
So that's a tension.
Yes, and yes, Danny.
Yeah. In the synagogue, I think the prayer leader is expressing well, it goes back to the Gerson Cohen quote. I mean, the prayer leader is expressing the spirituality of the congregation and using the music as a medium for the congregation to express its own spirituality. You know, it's not performance in the traditional sense. And I say that as a person who is willing to spend a lot of money and buy a ticket to great performances, and I do that all the time. I mean, I love to be performed to. But I think that this is in a way a different thing in kind. You know, we're not expressing the composer's spirituality so much as the congregation's. So I mean, I'm going out on a limb.
I want to go to a final.
Danny?
Yeah. I want to go to a final question, Monty.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, what you asked is very similar to the eternal question of ritual and consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
Is ritual there to be a prelude to consciousness, or is the ritual there to help you remember a previous experience of epiphany and therefore of a higher consciousness? It's a two-way street.
It's like
And
the
since
Keva
we're not-
Kavanah tension.
Right. But I
So
leave
you-
you a second. What do you
So I
think?
want to move to a closing thought. You know, we all pray for the end of this pandemic time when we can return to the power of singing with one another, which is what Jewish choral music is all about. And it's very, very different in the world of Zoom. And that's what we're limited to now. So we all know eventually we will get back to the point where we can sing for one another. Someone in the chat box said they went to a church service today, one of the protest services, where the singers stood 6 feet apart. It must not have been a very large choir, but so I want to ask you to offer any thoughts you have on the Zoom world, and how do we encourage, get through the camera and bring people into the spiritual moment, and secondly, what do we do with choral music in the Zoom world?
It's so challenging. There's no way to sing spontaneously together. We've all tried it, and it's failed miserably. In the HUC Tfilot, one thing we've tried with the small group, which we haven't tried a bit, Shalom, because too many people, when we have a small minyan, to have the cacophony of
People saying Kaddish.
people saying Kaddish.
We
Right.
unmute everybody.
Right.
Yeah.
Another thing that we've done, the students have done at HUC, which has been just lovely, is they go around and designate, you know, if we have a litany of Nisim B'chol Yom, and have different people chant the different blessings. What I'd love to do somehow is get my choir together and have everyone sing a line. We can all sing each, you know, not all at the same time. Just to hear each other's voices in some way. There are no easy answers to this. What Les and I have found works the best is a lot of planning, not going too long, thinking about transitions, thinking about the flow and the arc of the tefillah, taking those moments very, very seriously. And then as leaders, making sure that we can transcend this medium and ke'ilu, as if we were in the prayer hall all together, so that hopefully some of that energy will transcend and the screen and be present for everybody else.
This is a whole new skill set that we're
It's a
being
skill-
forced to
yes.
learn.
But we have old skill sets that we can utilize. I mean, if you're reading a letter from a dear friend, or a relative of your mother. Especially if I've got a letter from my mother. My mother is Shalom, just gone. But I can read his letters. I can hear her voice speaking to me because it's in my head. So I'm hoping that what we do now to get us through this COVID time is to imagine what each other's voice, imagine each other's faces, imagine it, and try to allow that to be in this shul inside your cranium here, for the time being. I'm not as worried about getting through that. I'm more worried about what will happen when we go back, because I think that there's some things that we've gotten used to that people like, that I'm not sure I'm ready to give in on. That's another whole conversation. But in other words,
I want to jump in. I want to jump in on the choral answer.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because everyone knows that everyone who's not looking for a cure for COVID-19, the remaining 0.1% are trying to figure out how people can sing simultaneously on Zoom, and we haven't gotten to that situation yet. And as Les was just saying, the imagination can take over and be a beautiful experience. If you're in trouble and you're facing a challenge, I think it was Bronstein who said, listen to Beethoven, he'll never let you down. And great music can really do that, but singing together doesn't exactly work. We can imagine it. Virtual choirs serve some purpose and an important purpose, but it's obviously not the same experience. You can sing to a live recording, you can sing to a recording of something that you personally have sung in before, but what I'm hoping is that everyone remembers what it felt like not to have this thing that we took for granted, and the amount of joy that we can look forward to when we will be able to sing, and sometime we will be able to sing together, and the Shehecheyanu that we'll be able to make. Benjie, maybe this is your next text to set. Shehecheyanu for post-COVID-19 times, where people get a chance to really experience this holy art of choral music. We're not only singing the tune together, which is a form of unity, but singing the Rashi on the text, singing the Rambam on the text, commentary upon commentary, while we're all knowing we're doing something different in the service of the whole. And what a magical life that's going to be when we have it once again.
Is that a commission? Did you just commission her to write a Shehecheyanu?
Yes.
Shehecheyanu for the undetermined future, right?
Halavai, Mati.
Halavai.
But Bimhe Rabbi Yameinu, and make sure it's done by next week.
Bimhe Rabbi Yameinu. That's the way Mati commissions a piece, so trust me.
So I want to thank Cantor Benjie and Schiller, Rabbi Les Bronstein, and Maestro Mati Lazar for this wonderful conversation today. I sit on the board of the Zamir Choral Foundation because I know and feel the impact that Jewish choral music and Jewish music can have on our own souls and on the future of the Jewish community. The Zamir Choral Foundation promotes Jewish choral music as a vehicle to Jewish unity, to Jewish life, and continuity. It's the only organization of its kind. The Zamir Choral Foundation is the leading force behind a growing Jewish choral movement, and it sponsors 5 essential programs. The Hazamir International Jewish Teen Choir with over 40 chapters in the United States and Israel. The annual North American Jewish Choral Festival, which, friends, this year will be held as a virtual online immersive experience sometime in August. Watch your emails for announcements there. The Zamir Choral, a New York-based adult choral group. Zamir Noded, a choral program for young adults. And the Mandel Rosen Fund for New Music, which commissions new music to add to the growing repertoire of Jewish choral music, including works by Cantor, Benjie, and Schiller. Our foundation has pivoted very quickly, moving from our Hazamir canceled concert and festival in March and our postponed North American Jewish Choral Festival in July to regular engaging online programming, because we all desperately need cultural stimulation. If we can't get the face-to-face stimulation, we'll get it through Zoom. And with your help, there can be even more. If you enjoyed today's program, please consider making a donation to the Zamir Choral Foundation at zamirchoralfoundation.org. And we will promise to generate additional Jewish online music programming, more importantly, plan for the future of real-time, face-to-face Jewish choral singing. Again, my thank you to Les and Benjie and to Mati. And to take us out, please listen to a recording of Cantor Benjamin Ellen Schiller's composition, Ukaratem Dror, Proclaim Liberty in the Land, and how appropriate on this particular post-Chag and American crisis moment, Ukaratem Dror. Thank you, friends, for being with us today. Over 300 of us were on today's call. Yes, there is a recording of this session, and it will be posted to the ZamirChoralFoundation.org site, so you can listen to it and play it for your friends. And please remember that next Sunday, our session is scheduled for 2 p.m., not 4 p.m., 2 p.m. Eastern. And have a wonderful week and recovery from all the dairy you've eaten over Shavuot. Have a Lipitor on me.
Thanks, Danny. Just great. Thank you, Benjie. Thank you, Les. Benjie, you sound awesome. Do you remember that performance right after 9/11, after you wrote this piece?
It was one of the most exciting moments.
Yeah.
One of the most exciting moments in my life.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
And how do we find ourselves in another 9/11 moment now?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Piece wasn't long enough.
Timing.
I mean,
Timing.
It's mind numbing.
But I wanted to tell you that we were at. It was the first year I was the Baal Tefillah for Rosh Hashanah, maybe with Larry Kushner. This is in the 70s, right? And I'm a kid, and I'm teaching them some traditional melody. I think it's the the Yigdal, and I'm singing along, and they're singing it a little differently. They don't know it my way. And Kushner leans over and he elbows me and he says, listen to them, let them know you think they're holy people too. And once you sing it their way, after a while, they'll try it your way. And I realized, like, okay, in other words, they're singing it wrong, and you know that, Bronstein, but sing it their way. And then after a while,
Rabbi Bronstein, lo bashamayim he.
That was what he was saying. He was saying,
Exactly.
Miami, because he knows I was this elitist coming from this place. I know how it goes, and I did know how it goes. I was right, but he was really right. He says,
Now, think of what the composer would think. Think of what Zulzer would think when he comes and hears Vayehi ben Aaron, Vayomer Moshe, and the chords are wrong and the tune is wrong, and talk about the poor neshama of Solomon Zulzer.
I feel bad for Solomon Zulzer. I feel his pain. And yet, hey, everybody sings his songs, and nobody sings anybody else's. So he should feel a little nachas.
Well, Lewandowski gets a little nachas too.
Lewandowski also.
They're still living off the royalties.
That's right.
It's the only way to make money in Jewish music is to have died 100 years ago.
Pathetic.
All right, thank you for doing this.
Really appreciate it.
I hope we got even close to some of the things that you'd hoped we were going to talk about.
We did. We talked about a lot of things that we hadn't thought about, and it came out quite beautifully, I think.
It came from you.
And what was your? I cut you off earlier. What was the little episode that you wanted to relate to us? You had a story you wanted to tell us.
That was
And
it.
don't forget, there's still 150 people listening. So.
That's fine. No, that was it.
Les, maybe you can think of a different one.
There was that time. Remember that time? I don't remember. No, I'll think of one. You say something.
No, I remember. This is not quite apropos, but I just really want to share it, Mati. You tell me. Jesse Norman, solo recital, 6th encore.
Yes.
And somehow we knew it was the
Lincoln,
last one.
It was at Lincoln Center.
Somehow we knew.
Right.
And it was an American. It was almost like it was some kind of folk song.
She sang a folk song.
Right. And a different energy came into the room. And particularly, there was something she let down her guard. There's a lot of guard there.
Right.
She let it totally down.
Yeah.
It was if we came into her living room, and she sang very informally. And there was a magic an intimacy that we didn't experience in the rest of the concert. Mm-hmm. And there was some energy that she felt, some appreciation. I don't know how it happened. It might have just been the appreciation of the crowd.
It didn't mean, look, I bought a ticket for the rest of the concert. I wanted to hear the magisterium, and I didn't want to hear the intimacy.
Yeah.
But at the end, that intimacy is what actually embraced us in a way that the Majesty couldn't.
Yeah.
It was
It
remarkable.
was the most memorable moment.
Yeah.
Goes again. It mutes itself. I love it. I've experienced things like that myself with different kinds of music. Sometimes it was the wind ensemble of some famous college, and they played with the brass band, and then for the encore they played John Philip Sousa, and everyone said, "Now that's real band music."
Now that's band music.
Forget about Stravinsky's symphony, symphony for
Right.
wind instruments. Who cares
No, no.
about that?
That's
But
mommy.
I want to mention that it's not only the energy of the audience, but when a great artist, whether it's Jesse Norman or now I'm jumping over big oceans, Elie Wiesel singing music that's authentic to them, authentic to their 3-year-old psyche.
Yeah.
That's it. That's the source of their being.
You're talking about when he
it
was
all
at
goes away.
92nd Street Y, right? You're talking about the 92nd Street Y when
I'm talking about in general. Whenever he would sing,
I know, but yeah,
melodies from, and thanks for mentioning that concert. That was a special moment.
yeah.
Where I conducted Ellie singing a whole wide spectrum, including music that he learned as a child that he didn't write, but just the authenticity of the artist singing a genre of music, which is they could sing if they weren't even in this world. You could
Yeah.
still hear them singing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the most precious thing. But usually you don't get that from an artist who knows that the ticket has been bought, so they can be singing the kind of repertoire that they've been famous for.
That's what I wanted to hear, except that I was so grateful for the unforgettable coda, you
And
know.
maybe that's why Neela is as powerful as it is. It's the 6th encore.
Neither's the sixth time.
We've all gotten
And
to
it's
know
much
each
more intimate and quiet.
Yeah, it isn't.
There's no bombast at all there.
other. Yeah,
Right.
that's right.
Let's talk about Neela for a quick second. Chatanu lefanecha. Who is singing? We have a national anthem, Hatikva, that's in minor. And here we are at the end of Neila, beginning of Neila, we're proud of our Chataim. We're happy about that.
Yeah, he's doing the other one, but yes, it's such a glorious moment. You would never imagine that would be the sentiment that really gets the nail on the head of what we're feeling.
It could be that we're so proud of taking responsibility in Naumburg's famous vidui, tzadikim arachnu v'lo chatanu.
Right. That's right.
Righteous people. V'lo, and we have not sinned, and we have to own that we have not
Right.
sinned before we go, oh yeah, we have sinned.
Oh yeah, I forgot.
I know, but titharu, like you're clean, folks. Go eat. Go eat bagels and lox. You're clean, titaru. I don't know.
So by Neela, we feel that release.
So we're feeling a lot of anxiety these days, not knowing what Neela is going to look like. What is it going to feel like?
There was a whole series of questions about Yamim Noraim and how do we make music so important? What do we need to think about with that? That's a whole other conversation.
And the grand intimacy, great, gigantic intimacy that only comes with lots and lots of people, not social distancing, but really schwitzing together.
Yeah.
And how do we get to that? It's going to be very, very hard.
Benjie, what's that third Kol Nidre going to be like when the whole crescendo of emotion
I don't know.
is absent?
Exactly right.
I don't know.
Exactly.
Lamati, unless that's when I, as the congregant, am standing in front of my Zoom camera singing with Cantor. I listened twice, and now I'm empowered, and I've heard it over and over, exactly the same as Benjie described in the synagogue setting.
Yeah.
And I've been watching people sing along with the prayer leader, with the choir. Certainly in the Shiva services, you are watching people express their souls.
Oh yeah, they do. They do.
But it's going to be very hard, and it's going to require a lot of repetition, I think.
But look, by then, look, congregations that have continued uninterrupted to take care of each other and also to be outward looking, to be continually involved in the tzoros of the community. I mean, even before the last week's terrible tzoros, but I mean, if all through this time, you know, people that are food deprived and in need, all kinds of things. The congregations have continued to feel, you know, to continue to worry about the bigger needs of the tzorchei tzibur, you know, that those congregations will find a way to sing together. Because ultimately how they sing together, what they do get through this year's Nila is not going to be as important as the things that they needed to take care of. They need to take care of human beings in human need, you know.
The only thing that I'm really worried about is that when the tragedies and the difficulties pass, how quickly it is that people can forget the most precious things that they've learned. You know, Theo Bakel used to have this great story, which would take him 20 minutes to tell. I'll tell you in 10 seconds. The guy is desperate, looking for a parking spot. This is a New York story. I'm sure you know it. God, I need a spot. I need a spot. And finally he finds a spot and he says, never mind, God, I found one.
Right. But he makes all kinds of nadarim in the meantime, right?
Exactly. I wanted to make it short
putting
because
on filling and it's gonna be.
But I want to tell less of the joke and more of the focus of the joke, which is that this is going to be the real challenge after the Shechianu moment. How long can you have the tension between what have I missed and not lose track of that? I think that's one of the reasons that Avadim Hayinu and the whole thing about that Hayinu Avadim Mitzrayim, we were slaves. So when you stop being a slave, boy, it's so easy to forget about what it is that you learned when you were a slave.
To begin kvetching. Right.
Well, just the lack, and how once you have it, you forget all about it. It's the human nature to forget.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
So this divine gift of manna every day of the man for dinner. Kushner used to make the joke. He says, people look at me and say, what, manna again? You know, because that's what you're serving us? What, food, what divine sweet food from heaven that can taste like anything we want? Well, because once they forgot that they were slaves, now they can just go back to being obnoxious people, you know, and ungrateful people. Are we going to be ungrateful people after this? I don't know.
I don't know. That's why we have the Seder every year. Maybe we're going to find a way to have some kind of ritualized way of remembering.
Yeah, but B'Shem Omro, I'll use your parking spot joke or Theo Bakel's joke. I mean, that's what we have to hear on maybe at Yom Kippur.
Yep. Yep.
Whoever's tuning, I don't know what to do here. About it. I don't know.
Friends, on that note, we're going to say Erev Tov.
All right.
And hopefully that I think tonight is the night I get to be a carnivore post Shavuot.
Oh,
I'm looking
Enjoy,
forward to it.
Danny.
And everyone should know there are two other conversations that sort of ran through the chat group today. One has to do with listening to choral music, which is something we didn't really talk about, but you can listen on Zoom, which seems to be more acceptable than listening in the synagogue. And that's a whole other conversation. The other strand that we didn't get to, we work so hard as prayer leaders to connect with the people sitting in front of us. Now, when we go back to being in person, we're going to be relating to two different groups because there will still be people on Zoom.
right.
And so it's a different congregation, different kahal, different audience that we're connecting with. And how do you do both?
People were accommodating because it's not safe for them to come back yet, so we don't want to lose them. So
we have to use the expertise that we've developed and over time to figure this one out. That is going to be a great puzzle.
On the other hand, I noticed that there's been, almost 1,000 unique individuals who've participated in these webinars that we've been doing. Yeah. That's more than we ever get at a North American Jewish Choral Festival. And so, and if you think of your own synagogue services, there are more people participating in any given Shabbat now than there ever was before.
They show up on time.
It's amazing.
So do you. It's good.
That's a little gag for all those in my own congregation who are listening. You know, it's remarkable how tiny, you know, how prompt you are at these Zoom services.
Your congregants during
It's
in the
very
chat
easy.
box, they posted the link to services at Beth Am Shalom.
Yes,
God.
yes.
It's
guess
very
we-
easy when all you have to do is go to the next room.
It's a little easier.
That's right.
Yeah.
And get dressed from the waist up.
Amen.
No, I was thinking,
And now inquiring
on Zoom-
minds want to know.
We're nicely dressed. Very
this
much.
is this Zoom service could be the passive aggressive rabbi's dream. He can mute the cantor, or the cantor can mute the rabbi.
I know.
Terrible, terrible.
My
On
goal
that,
is to mute
that
myself.
inappropriate note.
On that note, thank you again. Really a zechut for us.
Thank
Benjie,
you.
Les, thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you
Onward.
all. Thanks, Danny. Thank you, Benji. Thank you, Les.
May
Love
this
you all.
50 some odd year of friendship continue.
Thank you, Fran.
Admev Esrim.
May have us ring.
We're getting close.
We're
Yeah.
getting.
Thank you, Angie. Take care, everybody.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye-bye.